Child and Youth Safety Online. How safe are the youth and children while surfing to the internet, and how it can reduce the harmful exposure? Concerns over the rising cases of addiction among the youth and how the community is being affected. Focus on youth leadership and the impact they might have in future politics and democracy in not only the country but the world. The current illegal arrests and abductions in the country. Greetings and welcome to Future Focus. I'm your host, Scovia Mondi, bringing you in-depth coverage of the issues shaping and affecting our society. Today, we focus on child and youth safety online, human rights, democracy, and drug abuse. Stay with us as we bring you the latest updates, expert insight, and real-life stories. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm your host again, Scovia Amondi. You can join the conversation on our social media handles at NotFamous and with the hashtag @NewsHour. And onto our first story, human rights, where many people are facing injustice. Freedom of speech is under attack, and many communities are being displaced by conflict. With many recent cases of abductions and illegal arrests, victims continue to suffer in silence. Who will stand up for those who cannot speak for themselves?
In Africa, reports show a spike in arbitrary detentions and censorship of journalists. In Kenya, IPOA has raised concerns over police excesses, illegal arrests, abductions, and extrajudicial killings being a greater concern in the country, with no sides taking accountability.
What we are seeing right now is that every time a person stands up to speak and call out the government, they are abducted, or you're silenced, or they use someone who's very important to you so that they can try to silence you.
Human rights violations are on the rise not only in the country but also worldwide. From restricted freedom of expressions to war crimes, millions of people are affected.
The freedom of the media has come under great attack since I would say since 2013, when President Uhuru Kenyatta took over power, or even earlier during President Kibaki, we saw the wife, the first lady then, storm newsrooms to demand a change in the way stories had been written. We have seen arrest of journalists now. During the protests by the Gen Z movement, we saw a lot of clamping down on free media. We saw during elections, previous elections, or during campaigns or protests, government saying you cannot cover this live, you cannot do this. But civil society also has a role to play in holding governments to account in areas where there is need for litigation, taking the government to court for failure to implement the constitution, taking the government to court for even breaking the law. And we have seen it happen a lot of times, and in most of those cases the government has won. The judiciary also has a role to play in ensuring that it assists in interpreting the law when cases are taken to court, so that then that way the constitution is fully implemented.
Human rights are universal, but they are constantly under threat. Everyone has a role to play in protecting them.
And now, our correspondent Samira Mohammed joins us live. Samira, do you think that the current society is aware of their rights? And I'm not talking about the Gen Z or the youth, but rather I mean the older and the more senior generation.
I would say initially, especially for the older generation, they were not quite aware of their rights and anything politically educated regarding this country. But after the controversial financial bill of 2024, many young youths became politically aware and educated, which then awakened a whole generation, not just the Generation Z, but also the millennials and their parents through awareness on social media, where they were conducting they were explaining this financial bill through different vernacular languages, which then ensured that the older generations became more involved as well, and everyone was aware of what was going on politically.
And so in regards to last year's protests, as you've talked about, would you say that the measures Gen Z took were rather extreme, or could there be a more alternative way to demonstrate?
I would not say their measures were extreme, but rather that they were not being heard. Yes, they tried different approaches, which was going through online and trying to raise their voices, saying what their opinions regarding the matter, but they were not heard. Actually, that's why they said the president and the entire government was nothing but tone deaf. So instead, they decided the only way for the government and the current regime to listen to them was to go to the streets, because that's the language that this government, this regime understands. Yeah.
So how do you think the government should have responded to these protests?
The government should have responded to the protest better by not calling them criminals or terrorists or goons. Instead, the president should have come that evening while he was addressing the public and said, you know what, I have heard what you guys are saying. You guys have gone to the streets. You said you don't want this financial bill. You don't want these oppressive, impunitive taxes. There's too much taxes. Let's sit down and we'll do something different and actually listen to the Gen Zs. When the Gen Zs said they wanted the government, the cabinet to be fired, they didn't say they wanted to be reshuffled. So you get that the president and the current regime is doing basically the opposite. If they just listen to what they say they wanted, then all this could have been easily avoided.
Thank you so much, Samira, and back to us in the studio. Joining us now is Sarah Kimani, who will help us dissect emerging issues within the human rights sector. Thank you so much, Sarah, for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
So, Sarah, what are the main barriers against human rights?
I think the most pressing, and this cuts across the world, whether what we call the developed countries and the developing countries, is the shrinking civic space. Protesting now seems to be a crime. And this, if you look at Kenya, since June 2024, when young people rose to demand the repeal of the Finance Bill 2024, if you look at Mozambique, after what they felt was botched elections, if you look at closer home in Uganda, if you look at Tanzania, in America, university students who have been protesting against the Israel assault on Gaza have actually either been suspended from school or expelled from universities. So the civic space has shrunk to an extent that citizens are not able to express themselves. And with that also comes a shrinking free media. And all these assaults are mainly carried out by governments that fear being held to account. So I would say a shrinking civic space and the media. The freedom of the media is also under serious strain.
What roles can Kenyans play in regards to human rights and safeguarding our rights so that they are not violated,
I think what needs to be done, at least for a country like Kenya, the laws are there. What would be important is to promote access to justice. It would be important for people who take cases to court to not only see justice to be done, but to actually experience justice being done. Cases drag in courts for years. Corruption means a lot of people who have no money will never get justice in courts, and not just here in Kenya, but across many other countries in the world. So access to justice, promotion of access to justice is very important. I think there is also need to educate citizens on what their rights are. We could have a good constitution, but as long as we do not know what it entails or what your rights are, it becomes difficult for you to be able to demand for that right. But also, for those of us who already know our rights, this is the time for us to rise up for ourselves, to rise up for those of us who have no voices, those of us who cannot be able to raise their voice against the ongoing human rights abuses in the country.
Thank you so much, Sarah Kimani. We appreciate your time with us, and it was a pleasure to hear from you with the wonderful insights. On to our next story and another pressing issue in the society, drug and substance abuse. With rising cases of addiction among the youth, communities and societies are struggling to cope. Our reporter Emmanuel Maluki takes a closer look.
Drug abuse among youths has reached alarming levels, with experts citing the surge due to poverty, peer pressure, and easy accessibility as key factors.
Why youths are commonly abusing drugs is the issues of peer pressure, where people are in a wrong company and maybe they are triggered to try and test part of those stimulants, and they end up getting into the addiction state.
According to Nakada, the most abused substance among youth aged 15 to 24 includes alcohol, cannabis, tobacco, and carts, with the majority of the affected youth being in both public and private universities. Experts warn that the problem is escalating due to the rise of social media drug markets.
Hallucinogens, where we have bangi, marijuana. These are drugs that cause changes in the brain function and people leading to hallucinations. Now, first thing is to educate, create awareness. What are the side effects of these three categories of drugs? And some might be youths today, but 10 years from now, they will be having organ failure, liver function problems.
While Christian drugs is a serious issue concerning our country and also the world as a whole, where university students are taking drugs to cope from stress, from projects and assignments, and also from relations trouble and also troubles from home. What can we do as a nation? I'm Emmanuel Maluki, joining from Global Frontier.
Joining us is Dr. Susan Juguna, a health specialist and a lecturer in Daystar University. Welcome, Daktari. So, Daktari, what do you think is a major factor that drives the youth to abuse drugs?
So let me talk about those who get inducted when they come into the university. One of the reasons is peer pressure and wanting to be in the in group, in the popular group, with those who seem to know how to navigate the environment. And I think that is a major push, because students are coming from high school where they were protected, where there are rules, and suddenly they are in this space which is open and they are free to explore. The high schools gave them some boundaries of the do's and don'ts, and suddenly here they are. There's so much space, there's so much time. Some of them have so much money also. And with that free space, the sense of responsibility of managing their time and their friends is quite a challenge. The second one for me is the developmental stage.
What can be the role of parents, seniors, and community elders in curbing the drug addiction?
The solution must be that the youth must sit at the head of the table, and parents, teachers, community support them to solve that problem. Without the youth sitting at the table and driving the process, we are going nowhere. We will use the same methods we've used, which have not worked. So in us getting the success story of those young people who have probably done drugs and stopped, and give us their reasons and rally others around them, so that probably the community, the parents can come in and providing resources to support positive initiatives that curb drugs.
What results do you usually get when individuals or addicts go through rehabilitation in centers that you've gone to help these addicts?
Hubs are a good space to get you away from the environment where drugs are being sold, so that you are in a position to get it like off your system. And that's most rehabs will be like 90 days. All right. And the rehabs are not enough, because now we are talking of drugs being endemic in the society. So the rehabilitation centers cannot be enough. They can't be enough. It means that every village must have a rehab center, as it is right now. The cost of running a rehab center is also very high, and that is why the fee that is paid is also very high. So that means that the person who went in because of economic reasons, they probably went in because they don't have resources like every other person, cannot access the rehab centers, because who will finance? Will I pay school fees or pay for rehab? All right. So the rehab is a good method, but we probably need to innovate and see how can we have rehabs that are affordable and have human resources within those rehabs that gives us affordable, that we can be able to work with these youth-led initiatives to get get the people off the drugs. I have and for the rehabs, the person must be willing. You cannot force them. If they are not willing, they must be willing to go to a rehab and be willing to change. And once they come out of the rehab, they cannot go into the same environment that was pushing them into drugs. So there is a lot of thinking that must go into it. But if they...
Thanks so much, Doctor. We take a short break, but when we come back, we bring you into the world of democracy, politics, and child and youth safety online.
Indomie, Indomie mautam. Indomie, Indomie mautam. Indomie, Indomie mautam. Indomie, Indomie mautam. Indomie, Indomie na kafleva, sosi imeja kwa bumbu, sunda maji ongeza, weka kitu kwa jiko, neka mali kwa sinia unatandaza. Mixi unachanganya, shike ladha daka tatu, rada safi mautamu. Kuku beef, supa mojo mautamu. Kana nice na kaboro mautamu. Bei safi na unashiba mautamu. Indomie, Indomie mautamu. Indomie, Indomie mautamu. Indomie, Indomie mautamu. Indomie, Indomie mautamu. Indomie, furahia mlo mtamu.
The young people, majorly the Gen Z, are becoming increasingly active in politics and leadership in the country. This involvement further rose last year, June 2024, as they protested against the finance bill. These protests showed the youth's passion for change and decisions made by the government of this country. Let us explore the involvement of the youth and how they are changing the country's decision-making. Our reporter, Wendy Chalo, brings us more.
This time, if the youths are not on the table, we are breaking the table. Comrades, power! Comrades, viva!
While democracy is still celebrated worldwide, many citizens still struggle for their rights. Reports indicate a rise in election-related violence and political detentions, with inclusion of abductions and illegal arrests.
People in Kenya are very active in the involvement with matters to do with politics. Recently, we've seen them calling out the government on issues which they think are affecting Kenyans, including the rising cost of living, the illegal abductions and illegal arrests, and also the health system which they think is being mismanaged.
In Kenya, the youth make up almost 75% of the total population, but the youth participation in democratic processes still remain low.
I believe the state of democracy is on the decline, simply because a lot of young people don't believe in the institutions when it comes to voting. So there was a study that was done by The Guardian sometime in September of 2023, and it talked about how globally young people are not believing in democracy.
Democracy remains a pillar of society, but it still faces challenges of transparency and active participation. Wendy Chalo, Nairobi County.
Youth involvement and engagement in Kenyan politics and leadership, the Kenyan government power shifts. The youth form a significant voting bloc and a growing voice in leadership. Despite this, many still feel sidelined. With me is Dr. Odongo Nicholas, a democracy expert. Thanks so much for being with us today. Let's jump right into the discussion. What is your take on youth involvement in politics?
Interest within the youthful population in terms of the politics as well as the political governance of the country. So I would say it has improved greatly. There's still room for improvement, obviously. There are challenges that need to be addressed, but I think we are better, and especially if we compare ourselves with our peers in the continent, we are in a very solid ground.
Do you think the government is doing enough to involve the youth in the current democratic affairs in the country?
So before last year, it means the government was not doing anything, and that's why the youth had to go and fight and try to claim that spot and that space at the table for them. Since last year until now, I have not seen any indication as to whether the government is doing or is putting programs into place or initiatives into place to ensure improved youth involvement in politics. I've not seen any indication of that. So I guess only time will tell. But if you ask me, I think either the government is not doing anything at all, or whatever they're doing, we can't see it. And if we can't see it, then we can't count it.
Are the youth a threat to democracy today, Dr. Dongo?
What is democracy? Democracy is governance by the people, for the people, and what's the third one? But generally, democracy is people at the center. And Gen Z is one demographic that has been ignored for the longest time. So by them fighting to be part of the center, I don't think that is a threat to democracy. If any case, in any case, that's an improvement to democracy.
Well, that was a very wonderful insight from Dr. Dongo. Thank you so much for giving us your time today. It was a pleasure hearing from you. The internet is a safe space for entertainment, education, and communication. With more young people accessing the internet than ever before, cyber threats such as online predators, cyberbullying, and harmful content pose serious risks. Just how much more danger are our young ones being exposed to? Our reporter, Kinagwa, shares more on this story.
The internet is an incredible source, but it comes with dangers. Cybercrime cases involving minors have increased by at least 40% in the past year, according to recent data.
I think Gen Zs and Gen Alphas, for the most part, are heavily invested in technology because it's the future. Like, take myself, when I was growing up as a kid, we never really had smartphones. We went outside and communicated with our friends, and like during school holidays, we didn't really talk to our friends. But now, in the current space and where the world is headed to, communication is key.
According to a survey by Child Fund International and African Child Forum, over 13% of minors have been exploited or abused by online predators in the last year. This rising exposure is becoming more and more of a concern.
I feel like kids should not be exposed to social media at a younger age, because one thing, I feel like kids will be too exposed and they will face a lot of cyberbullying when they're young, and they'll come up with a defensive mechanism to deal with abuse later in life.
The rise of online threats is making things worse. Children as young as 10 years, even younger, are being tricked into sharing personal information and even lured into nudity through sophisticated scams. Authorities are urging tech companies to enforce stricter safeguards. Reporting from Nairobi, I am Ashley Kinagwa.
As you come to the end of this program, here are some of your opinions so far.
That's all for tonight's edition of Future Focus. We hope this program has shed light on these critical issues and inspired action. Stay informed, stay engaged, and remember, change starts with you. I'm Scovia Mondi. Have a blessed week and see you next time.